time is 7:06. And why don't we start off now then with a roll call, please?
I'm just going to go in order of how you guys appear. So first it's Commissioner Garcia.
I'm here.
Commissioner Glass.
Here.
Commissioner Simpson.
Here.
Commissioner Hannon.
Here.
Chair Funabashi.
Here.
Commissioner Min.
Here.
And Commissioner Bajaj.
Here.
Okay, with that, all please rise and we'll say the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so I take it everyone's had a chance to review the agenda, and seeing there's really only one blue folder item, which we'll take up under public participation on non-agenda items, and the other is a presentation jointly with the other commission, and then we'll get into the update on our previous projects. Unless anyone has anything compelling, can we accept the agenda as presented? Does anyone have any suggestions for changes? Or I would go on through and we'd go on to the next item. Okay. Then seeing no objection, I will go on to the consent calendar. And all of you are familiar with this. I'll get through those items F and G, and we'll circle back to approve those in a moment. So the consent calendar, these are business items except those formally noticed for public hearing or discussion are assigned to the consent calendar. The commission members may request that any consent calendar items be removed, discussed, and acted upon separately. Items removed from the consent calendar will be taken up under the excluded consent calendar section below. Those items remaining on the consent calendar will be approved in one motion following oral communications. So I've just read that for the formalities. Obviously, we have our affidavit of posting and the meeting minutes. Since we have no excluded consent calendar items. Let's see. Okay, so I'll circle back now. I think I can, before we go into that public participation on that one non-agenda item, can I entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I will like that.
Okay, how about we'll give the motion to John and the second to Commissioner Glass. Okay, if all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Do we have any opposed? Okay, seeing none, then that passes unanimously. Thank you. So the H1, public participation on non-agenda items. I believe all of you now have had a chance to review that one email that came from a fellow commissioner. Let's take a look here real quickly. That would be from Commissioner Matthew Hensley, who is a member of the Planning Commission. And essentially, obviously, this is a non-agenda item, but the gist of it is a 5-unit condominium project on Prospect Avenue that has red curb directly in front of it. And his question for us to direct to staff is through Public Works review, can those perhaps 2 spaces at that red curb in front of the proposed project be converted from red curb to parking? So what I think he's looking for, what I'm looking for now is just, and Gene, you can direct me if you want a motion for us to give you a directive now, or can that be at the end of the meeting for directions or to staff?
A staff referral is a possibility. Another possibility is just basically me informing you and the commission that staff can take a look at his request, and we can take it from here.
Okay, so if you would, please we'll make a mental note, certainly to circle back and make sure that that's part of our referrals to staff before we adjourn this evening. Does that sound good? Okay. All right, let me get back to our agenda then. Let's see. Oh, I should ask Gene, do we have anyone else from the public that has anything to say on any public participation on non-agenda items?
Not that I'm aware of, but I believe if there are any, that Katira might be able to mention them as well. But I don't think we've had any other input.
Yeah, I can confirm just for the record, there are no e-comments and there are no Zoom attendees for public participation on non-agenda items. And also for the record, there were none for the consent calendar either.
Very good. Thank you very much. Okay, then at this time, we will recess to a joint special meeting of the Budget and Finance Commission and Public Works Commission for a discussion regarding the proposed 2021-22 capital improvement projects. So I will hand it over to staff. Oh, do I need a motion to close this meeting and reconvene?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, then I do need a motion to adjourn our commission's meeting and to recess to a joint special meeting with Budget and Finance Commission.
So moved.
Motion made.
Okay, I believe a motion from Commissioner Hannon, and who made the second? Commissioner
Larry.
Glass. Okay, all right then. Our current meeting is adjourned, and we are now in our meeting with Budget and Finance.
And with that, Gene, do we need to go through a roll call now?
Yes. So similar order, Commissioner Garcia for the Public Works Commission.
Here.
Commissioner Glass. Here. Commissioner Simpson.
Here. Sorry, I was muted. I'm here.
Commissioner Hannon.
Here.
Chair Funabashi.
Here.
Commissioner Min.
Here.
And Commissioner Bajaj.
Here.
And then we also have one of our city staff, Doug, who will be doing the roll call for the Budget and Finance Commission.
I roll call for Budget and Finance Commission. Sorry, this thing is skipping all over the place. Commissioner Woodham,
Here.
Commissioner Samples,
Here.
Commissioner Wynn,
Here.
Commissioner Johnson,
Here.
Chair Conroy,
Here.
Commissioner Solomon,
Here.
and I think I covered, am I missing anybody? Sorry, this thing is jumping around.
Mr. Marin is here as well.
I'm sorry about that.
No problem.
Commissioner Marin. And I think that's it.
Okay, so it seems like our both commissions are all present and accounted for. Gene, do we need to make any formality in terms of the chair leading this part of the meeting, or could we just dig right into your presentation?
I believe we can dig right in. I think we're generally maybe in consensus that you, as a chair of the Public Works Commission meeting, would be running the joint meeting as well.
Okay, very good.
Chairperson Funabashi, is that our cue then to move forward?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Commissioners, thank you for inviting us. Tonight, we're going to be presenting you with the proposed 5-year capital budget. I'm going to be joined by Andy Wingy, our city engineer, and Brad Lindahl, our CIP manager for the city. Before I get started on the presentation, and before I start sharing my screen, I do want to apologize on behalf of Mike Wotzansky, our assistant city manager. He's the one that typically comes and makes this presentation to you. Tonight, he had a personal matter that he could not be here to join us. So he's asked a team of individuals, me, Andy, and Brad, in order to fulfill that on his behalf. So we'll be going through that. And with that, I will start sharing my screen and start the presentation for you. All right, can everybody see the screen now? Fantastic. So again, this is our proposed 5-year capital budget program. And Brad, maybe you want to start kicking off your portions of it now.
Great. Good evening, commissioners. This is an opportunity we have to speak to you every year on what we're looking forward to over the next fiscal year as far as capital improvement funding. Unfortunately, last year, I don't think we were able to get together. So it's been 2 years since we've had a chance to talk about this. This is an opportunity to look at what we're planning ahead and do a quick review of what we've done over the past fiscal year, as well as talk about some of the criteria we use when we plan and approve and propose budgets for your consideration. Next slide, please. Why is the CIP important? This is what we'll talk about. If we look back at the accomplishments, we look at the review criteria, talk about some of the carryover funding that we have on several of our projects and what we've got recommended over the next fiscal year. Next slide, please. Why is the CIP important? Well, as we all know, capital improvements are necessary to maintain the quality of life of our community. It's necessary to address health and safety issues, both on the ground and underground, in the buildings that we operate, and in the streets that we drive on. Good infrastructure is important on maintaining property values in the community, as well as promoting economic development in the community. As you can see by the photo there on the right-hand side, where you see somebody doing some of the sidewalk grinding to eliminate trip and fall hazards, it helps the city address liability concerns. I guess on the next slide, then Ted, you're going to take over.
Thank you, Brad. Yes, I mean, we start off with the accomplishments of the fiscal year 2021. And this is a listing of some of the projects. It is not all of the projects. The citywide slurry seal project, phase 1. Really, this was part of a big effort that we did with our pavement management system. We came to the city council under this new concept of incorporating slurry seal into the pavement management system. It actually helps preserve and extend the life of our good streets. It was something that the city council supported when we started this new pavement management study, at which time the city council gave an objective of reaching a PCI, a pavement condition index of 75 in 10 years. The slurry was an integral component of that in preservation of our good streets, essentially. For this project, we spent $500,000 plus or minus, and it is part of our effort to gain that PCI improvement. The North Redondo Beach bike path in your upper right-hand corner of the slide, that's the 2 blocks, one north and one south of Artesia Boulevard, where we improved not just the bike facility, but also the pedestrian experience and re-landscaping, significant re-landscaping with drought-tolerant, low-maintenance type of plant material. That also incorporated a parking lot on the north side, where the city council and the businesses felt that there was need for additional parking to assist the boulevard businesses and what have you. That was about a $1 million endeavor, about $450,000 plus or minus for each of those blocks, which were about an acre each. The pier parking structure has undergone some significant repairs. This last phase of the project was about $2 million or 2.3 total with of construction and design. It sort of complemented the initial project a couple of years earlier at about $1.9 million. So we've gotten not just the facade, the westerly facade of the pier parking structures, but also the bays that are on the inside. Also incorporated some repairs on the Mondstadt Pier. That has been completed, and we'll talk about future phases in the next set of slides. On the residential street resurfacing, cycle 2, phases 1 and 2, about $4.8 million worth of improvements. Again, part of the city council's commitment to improving the roads in the city, improving our pavement condition index within that 10-year period. And that was a significant amount of investment that the city council brought in. You know, I want to say to both the slurry seal and the residential street rehab, another component of that improvement are the pavement markings that are out there. With the new projects, the new pavement markers are all, they're all a much harder material. It's unlike the paint, we are using a significantly thicker material that is going to have a 5 to 10 year life within it. So our pavement markings are not going to be needing repainting with a new thermoplastic material that'll last for several years without having to be retouched up. And then on the special park needs, the Julia Field Power, for those of you that are familiar with it, there are trailers with overhead lights that are used whenever the soccer, baseball, softball teams are actually using those fields. The project was an air quality improvement, a quality of life improvement for the residents around there, where we actually brought in power onto the field and put pedestals that these generators or these power packs can now be plugged in and will no longer have to run off of generator power. So it cuts down on the noise, it cuts down on the fumes from those generators. That project was also completed last year. And I say this is a summary of some of the key projects. Overall, we've accomplished about $21 million worth of CIP projects that were completed in that fiscal year. Another couple of projects to highlight on the facilities. The Redondo Beach Transit Center project, it is actually in construction. It is a $11.5 million construction project as part of a total $16.8 million project. As you are aware, that's to relocate the existing transit center from being on the backside of the Galleria on Kingsdale to the new facility that's just south of Target. The project is well into construction. We anticipate construction of what we call phase one, the new transit center location. Expect that to be completed the end of the calendar year, at which time we will start phase two, and phase two will start the demolition of the old transit facility behind the parking structure at the Galleria. And then there are some proposed roadway improvements and widening of that intersection to add a northbound right turn lane so that at the end of it, Kingsdale will terminate at Artesia with dual northbound right turn lanes and dual left turn lanes as well. The City Council chamber improvements is under construction today. That project is starting to look fantastic. This is an image of what it looks like now with the new dais. You can see the location of where the new monitor is going to go in the center behind the City Council. So we will no longer have to tweak our necks and our heads as we turn to the left to look at the screen. We'll be able to see that up front directly. The project is now making the chamber ADA compliant. There were significant ADA improvements that have been constructed in order to make it ADA compliant, all the way from the City Hall portion of it into the front lobby portion of it. This is a multi-million-dollar project that is being completed as we speak. The Morale House roofing, that in itself has a special architectural type of shake roof, but as we know, shake roofs aren't necessarily the ideal roofing construction material. So what we utilized is a new shake structure or roofing material that gives the architectural features of what we want to preserve out there, yet has, with the new technology, it has a fire retardant that's equivalent to some of the newer improved products. That project has been completed, and as you drive by, you'll see the new wood that's out there. The pier railing project replacement, that's almost an $800,000 to $1 million project, which we're adding some additional funds for. As you know, the teal sort of colored rails that are out there today, a lot of them have been weathered. Some of them have actually been deteriorated because of the impact of the salty air and the salt mist. During this last pandemic year, we initiated call it replacement or refinishing of those railings by in-house staff. They would remove the rail segments, about 5 to 9 segments at a time. We sent them to a local manufacturing facility that actually sandblasts and refinishes them with a much hardier finish, yet the exact same color. And we've been undergoing through that effort on a maintenance level. For next year, we're going to be complementing that with a replacement and a bid contract for not just the replacement of the segments that have to be replaced, but to see if a contractor can actually increase the volume and the turnaround on that replacement. The citywide sidewalk grinding program, it's really part of our efforts to improve not just the quality of life, but reduce the liability for the city. As a result of that, the City Council appropriated $500,000 to grind any locations in the city that were 1.5 inches down to 1/2 inch. That, for the most part, has been completed at this point, all the way from the north end to the south end of the city. There are There was still some sidewalk enhancement project funding that was given to us by the city council. That is yet to be completed, but this effort has really paid off quite nicely and has actually helped us with a couple of our liability cases. The RB-PAC electronic message board, that was just to change the electronic board that was up there. It was outdated. It was having a lot of technical problems where several of the lights were non-functioning, and therefore staff was having some concerns with that. The city council appropriated about $120,000 of that money to replace it. A local resident in the city of Redondo Beach, who also happens to be a manufacturer and installer of such signs, bid on the project. He was awarded the project, and I think that has been completed with the exception of a few punch list items that need to be cleaned up at this particular point. The other, on the roadway side, we have several roadway projects that we can highlight for you. Burrell Street resurfacing and drainage improvements. That is everything from Flagler to Prospect. It is about a $1.8 million project, but it's a project that's going to be encompassing a complete street concept. It is not just going to be resurfacing the roadway. It's not going to be improving the drainage exclusively. We've gone to the city council and talked about the concepts of bicycle facilities, marked bike lanes for the bicyclists, improvements in the sidewalk, widening of the sidewalk to improve the pedestrian experience. That is well underway from a design perspective. Manhattan Beach Boulevard is the other project that is in design. It's for a full resurfacing of the street all the way from Inglewood to Aviation. It's going to be an almost $2 million project. We have already come to the commission, to the Public Works Commission, again, to talk about the complete streets concept. We are incorporating bicycle facilities that both the commission and the city council have supported in concept, in addition to the sidewalk improvements that are proposed up there. There will also be for Manhattan Beach Boulevard significant landscape improvements. That median is aged and weathered, and we'll be preserving as many of the mature trees as possible. Yet at the same time, we're going to give it a fresh look with new material that's ground cover as well as tree installations as well. Next is Torrance Boulevard resurfacing. This is a project that now I can say is the entire stretch of Torrance Boulevard in the city of Redondo Beach. It started out initially as a project that was from the east city limits to Pacific Coast Highway. A couple of meetings ago with the city council during the mid-year, the city council authorized some monies to expand the design and construction of the project to go from Pacific Coast Highway to the Torrance Circle at the pier. That would complete the project overall. And Andy will talk about the additional funding that has been appropriated for that, but it makes this complete so that we could resurface Torrance Boulevard. Again, improving bicycle facilities out there, improving pedestrian facilities where possible, and then just an overall improvement to the street itself. And then lastly is the North Redondo Beach bike path extension. We talked about the completed project near Artesia, but the North Redondo Beach bike path on the south end terminates at Felton. And we have a gap closure that the city council has approved, which is the bikeway extension from Felton to Inglewood. This is going to be partnered with additional work, but this particular extension we have received outside funding for at about $1.1 million. That includes both design and construction. About $200,000 of that is going to be for the design part of the project. That'll complete the bike path all the way to Inglewood. There's subsequent projects that are moving forward. I believe the $200,000 that I just mentioned is actually for Inglewood that we're also receiving outside monies for. And that's to continue a bicycle facility, class 1, class 2, that's yet to be determined from the terminus of the North Redondo bike path on Inglewood down to Grant and to Ripley, where we've got an existing bike path on Grant and a proposed bike path on Ripley. And that will be part of the gap closure of the overall bike path improvements. Andy?
Hey, thank you, Ted, and good evening, commissioners. Happy to see you again, even though it's just a small box on my screen. It's good to see you.
I'm going to be talking in this segment about some of our active traffic mitigation projects. These are projects funded by Metro. Primarily, these are competitive projects where we've gone out with the support of the South Bay COG to secure money for improvements identified as of regional importance. The first one on the list here is what we call our PCH arterial study. We did several phases here. The first phase was to look at the entire length of PCH from its northern border with Hermosa to Palos Verdes Boulevard, where we share only half the roadway for the rest of the city with the city of Torrance. So we stopped at Palos Verdes Boulevard, and several proposed improvements to improve traffic were identified. Fortunately, Caltrans, who operates Pacific Coast Highway, is coming through with a capital maintenance project in the next couple of years. And so a number of the recommended improvements, we've kind of shifted over to them, and they've accepted responsibility for design of these projects. And then in the future, using future money from Metro, will be doing the construction, their own funding, as well as Metro money will be doing construction. So good news there that we can identify these, and that Caltrans will be implementing those. There is one exception. That's this corner of Torrance Boulevard and PCH in the southbound direction, where we are embarking on a right turn lane improvement there next to the 76 station. We have some hurdles to get through. We're about 90% of the way through our design, but we have some right-of-way issues to take care of there. So that one's underway. The second one is a similar right turn lane on Aviation at Artesia. This one has been contentious. We are currently moved into an eminent domain proceeding with the property owner there to acquire the necessary land for the project. So that one will be slow for the next year or two until that property is secured, but our design is very close to completion there as well. Inglewood southbound at Manhattan Beach Boulevard, a right turn lane dedication has been made by the developer there who redeveloped the gas station, and we have completed design, and I believe this design's been approved by council, and we go to advertising this week. So we'll be collecting bids for this project within a month or so, and be able to get going on that sometime this summer. And then we also have a newer project where we're just beginning our design at Anita and 190th Anita, Redondo at PCH, the westbound turn lane. This is a project where we're going to improve traffic flow in the westbound directions, especially turning right, going northbound on PCH. We won't be touching any of the residential parking. There was some confusion on that earlier. We will be narrowing the median as well as rechannelizing some of the lanes to accommodate this. So that's a project we're just getting going on, but one we're looking forward to completing. Besides traffic, we have a number of other categories of projects, and this is certainly not all of them, but these are some of the highlights. The South Bay Bicycle Master Plan has been a topic we've discussed with the Public Works Commission on a number of occasions. We have a big project underway to implement a number of segments of installation of those bicycle lanes, class 3 bike routes. And so that is coming forward. We're in the design process there. Our next step is to go to Caltrans to get approval to continue the project, go into construction, approval of the funding. So that when we're with Caltrans, we're never quite sure how long that one is going to be delayed. So we're not holding our breath, but we are pushing to move forward on that one as best we can. And we'll address a good portion of the South Bay Bicycle Master Plan segments that we are planning to improve with this project. So we're excited about that one. Grant Avenue, there are 6 signalized intersections along Grant Avenue where the signals need to be improved. In the domino effect way that construction projects go, that meant we had to improve the civil side. We had to change some curbs, put in some bulb outs, all to improve the pedestrian experience and provide good visual clarity with the lights, the signals there. So This project expanded some. Our grant that funded this project was not sufficient to cover the entire cost. So we have bifurcated the project into over 2 years. This year we are purchasing the signals, which have a long lead time. So the city will purchase those and then provide them to the civil contractor who will install them in the next fiscal year. So we have another grant to do signal work. So we will combine that grant with the one that we currently have to get this project done, but that grant funding won't be available until the new fiscal year. So that one is kind of halfway done, but we anticipate finishing it up either late this calendar year or late next calendar year. The next 3 projects in this bullet are sewer pump stations, 3 locations: Alta Vista Park parking lot, Portofino, along Portofino Avenue, and along Yacht Club Way. These are all well into the design phase, 90% or so. We're going through a permitting process with the regional board on for water quality reasons on that. So we'll, as soon as we clear that and finish up the design, we'll be moving forward with construction. These are all funded by our wastewater fund, so dedicated funds there for these. Also from our wastewater fund, our sanitary sewer network improvements, and we have a specific project in construction right now on south end of town to improve the capacity of the sewer system in the vicinity of the Legato development. We're finally getting to some harbor work that we've been planning for a long time, dredging and breakwater improvements. Our dredging project has a long lead time for permitting. We're through most of the hurdles on that now and anticipate being able to move forward with dredging in the spring of 2022, waiting for some environmental restrictions on when we can do the dredging on that one. So we anticipate being ready in the spring with that. Excited about that one. That one's been a long time coming. Along the pier, we have a number of light fixtures that were in need of replacement. Our staff is actually competent and capable of installing these, but we needed to purchase them. I think it was just last week, the council approved the purchase of several hundred light fixtures. I don't remember the exact number, almost $500,000 worth of light fixtures. So those will be purchased and installed by our staff over the next months and maybe years. Then we have Dominguez Park improvements underway. This is a set of projects to improve the play area and the walkways in the Dominguez Park area. We've been to the Parks and Recreation Commission a couple of times to get public input on that. So we have a good conceptual design now. We'll be moving forward into engineering design at this point with that project. And then discussed a lot recently in some of the council meetings is our skate park, which is taking a little longer than we'd hoped because we're approaching it from a design build point of view. That's a process the city is authorized to do, but has not yet done. And so we're kind of creating the wheel on some of these processes. So that one's taking a little bit longer, but excited about moving forward with that project. Hope to see that RFP out on the street in the next couple of weeks, actually. So, all right, thank you, Ted. Brad, I think we're back to you, right?
Okay, well, as we get the proposals in from our various departments to evaluate some of their requests for new capital improvement projects, we follow a set of evaluation criteria that has been previously approved by the City Council. And that is, do these projects meet health and safety requirements? Do they improve the health and safety of our community? Does it meet some state, federal, or local mandate? This is very much comes into play when it looks at our stormwater issues and our stormwater projects. Does it implement a project that has been in the strategic plan? Does it implement a strategic plan goal? Does it complete an existing project? We have several projects that we phase over time. We do conceptual work, we do design work, then we do the construction portion of the project. Does it support economic development? As well as, will this project result in future operating savings? Finally, when we have grants, we very often have to come up with a local match. So we look at projects that have significant outside funding, specifically grant funding. And you'll find out of all of our recommendations tonight, over a third of the funding, about $7.3 million, is represented by grant funding that's been secured by the city. So Ted.
All right, so our next steps, and this isn't the end of the presentation, Commissioners. We've got a few more to give you. We're here providing you with our set of recommendations, and those are the next set of slides that we're going to be presenting to you. We are part of the staff of the CIP committee. So it's not just Andy, myself, and Brad, but there's multiple department heads as well as the assistant city manager that go through that. We're really here to seek your feedback. Your feedback is going to be going to the city manager and to the city council. It is an integral part of not just what we propose, but if you have any questions, if you have any suggestions, or if you think that there's anything that has been missed, this is your opportunity to provide that feedback to us. The city manager's proposed budget is going to be going to the city council for the charter date by May 16th. That'll incorporate the operating budget and the capital improvement budget. And those, after they have been presented to the city council, they will be brought for review and comments from the Budget and Finance Commission on two separate occasions, on May the 27th and June the 10th, which will then be followed by presentations to the city council. So those are the next steps. Now we'll share with you about the funding. Brad?
Okay, well, as I said, while we're recommending about $20 million in new funding, there's significant project funding already in the budget that will be carried forward. As a snapshot, as of last week, we're looking at carryover funding on our sewer projects by about $9.3 million. As Andy mentioned, we have three large sewer pump station projects, all three with a budget of approximately $2 million apiece, as well as our ongoing sewer facility improvement project of over $2 million. So we have a lot of money already set aside for these projects that we'll be carrying forward. On the drainage side, we're continuing to do EWIMP implementation, some of our regional projects that we're in partnership with our surrounding communities. We have a project with the Green Street project with Torrance in Hermosa Beach, as well as the Alondra Park project, which is in the Dominguez Channel and will be funded, led by the LA County, which is about a $25 million project. So we'll be participating in that project. So some of our funding that we're proposing will be to implement drainage-related projects on a regional basis. Street projects, we have several million dollars, 17.7 carrying forward there. A large portion of that is sitting in the Inglewood Manhattan Beach Boulevard project. I think we have over $4 million remaining in that because we had a higher estimate on some of our right-of-way costs for that one. So we have several projects carrying forward, street projects. In the waterfront, we have over about $5.5 million worth of carry forward funding. About $2.5 million of that is our Moonstone Park funding that's still available for those improvements. On the park side, we have over $2 million carrying forward. And on the public facilities projects, over $4 million. And general improvement projects, just over about $15,000. So in total, we have over almost $14.5 million that we anticipate carrying forward into the next fiscal year. On new funding, we're recommending, as I said, about $20.2 million. Sewer funding, not a lot of new sewer funding since we have so much carrying forward on those projects that I mentioned. On the drainage side, we are getting our new Measure W funding at the countywide level, and that's for those regional capital projects. On the street side, the street projects, we have about $10.1 million. A lot of that money is with the grant funding also. On the waterfront side, we're at $4.7 million. 2.3 of that is towards the dredging effort. So that's a significant portion of that. Park projects, just over $600,000. And on the public facility projects, it's almost $4 million in recommended new funding. As a part of that, $2.75 million of that is the grant funding for the additional grant funding for the transit center project. So we're looking at a total of $20.2 million next fiscal year for capital improvement projects. Andy.
Thank you, Brad. So at this point, I'm going to go through our 42 projects that we are either new projects or projects that are recommended for an additional funding for this fiscal year, this coming fiscal year. So I'll try and make all 42 of these sound very exciting for you. We're starting off with our wet utilities. As Brad mentioned, we have a lot of money already appropriated for our major projects, but we do want to recommend another $250,000 for our Basin 2 sewer pump out. That's part of our Harbor Docks replacement project. And so we are looking at our newest estimates. We're going to need a little more money for that project, $250,000 there. Drainage, that's stormwater. This of all the utilities that cities deal with, this is the one that is least funded. Very few good mechanisms for funding this. Measure W is a new one in the county that has helped, but our needs are much, much greater than the $700,000 or so we get a year. But we've got $500,000 recommended at this point for our Enhanced Watershed Management Plan. That's what EWIM stands for, which is a joint plan with the other beach cities to implement projects to clean up our stormwater discharges to the ocean and to the Dominguez Channel. The biggest chunk of our projects come from our street improvements. I think I counted it was 16 projects that we'll be going through here. I mentioned the Anita Redondo project already. Some additional funding is recommended. This is grant funding, which we've had some money to start the project, but as I mentioned, we're just getting started, and so the bulk of the funding is coming in the next fiscal year. Artesia Boulevard resurfacing is on our list of arterial resurfacing projects. Already some funding has been appropriated. This will be an additional $80,000 to help us get the design up and moving. Beryl Street, Ted had mentioned, we're working on that. We got a lot of good public input from the Public Works Commission as well as the City Council. Some enhancements were suggested at those meetings. We're trying to incorporate those. They're going to require some additional funding. So we're asking for another $400,000 towards that project. Our annual council directed implementation to get our bicycle plan up and going, $85,000, is kind of available for unspecified projects. We have some ideas for this one, but we've no commitments yet, but that's a council directed number more or less to implement the South Bay Bicycle Master Plan. A couple of annual projects coming up next, citywide curb ramps. This is to help the city improve the ADA ramps around the city to meet current standards as part of our overall compliance with the ADA laws, federal laws. We also have a citywide, Ted mentioned this, one of our three-pointed attack on improving our street surfaces, maintaining our street surfaces, our citywide slurry seal program, about $500,000 recommended here for appropriation. Dowvale Johnson Bicycle Lane Improvement. This is another gap closure project to improve the route leaving the transit station up off of Marine Avenue and moving south to the North Redondo Beach Bikeway. So this project will help improve that route from a current Class 3 to get parts of that up to Class 2. And improve some street crossings. This is just really the beginning of money to get some design and scoping done for that in this upcoming fiscal year. We continue with street projects here. Kingsdale resurfacing. So this is really our phase 3 of our transit center project. Phases 1 or 2, Ted described. Phase 3, which is not under contract yet, is to resurface Kingsdale Avenue from 182nd to Grant. This is one of the worst pavement condition index streets in our city. And so we're looking with the bus traffic we expect and the Galleria traffic we expect. We want to make sure we do a good job on this road surface. $400,000 we're asking for Manhattan Beach Boulevard. We do have money already appropriated for this project, but again, through the public outreach process, we've been given a number of suggestions of ways to improve, other enhancements. So we're asking for money to make sure we can accommodate those. Ted had mentioned the North Redondo Beach Bikeway extension. Metro's funded this project for $1 million for construction for the stretch between Felton and Inglewood. We got half of it last year. This $500,000 is coming in the next fiscal year, so that's on our list. We have another piece of bikeway extension turning south along Inglewood to get from the end of the anticipated new bike path in the SCE right-of-way down to Ripley to complete that connection. And we were given a grant of $140,000 from Metro for design of that segment. And then residential street rehab. This is kind of the primary activity that you probably noticed for our overall pavement condition approach. This is grind and overlay projects. Primarily, we do some concrete work as well as we're required to. $1.1 million for this. This is SB1 money, which is gas tax related statewide program. Fairly new. I think we're in our second or third year on this. So that's fairly restricted money. And then the third prong, besides slurry and our residential grind and overlay, we are introducing this year is attacking our deferred maintenance streets. These are streets with a very low pavement condition index that are kind of even too bad a shape to even rehabilitate through a grind and overlay. So we have to do a full rebuild on these. And we've not addressed those in the past. These are deferred maintenance, and over time, these numbers grow. So we wanted to begin to chip away at the inventory of those blocks. It's not a lot of percentage of our lane miles in the city, but they are very expensive to do because they are a full reconstruction. So we're starting with what we can here this year with $1.5 million. Okay, last couple here on this sheet. Sidewalk improvements, Ted has mentioned our sidewalk grinding program. Torrance Boulevard resurfacing. So this is a significant increase in this project budget. We feel it's necessary because we did want to extend the project from PCH all the way to the Torrance Circle. Torrance Circle, if you recall, is a number of layers and roadways. There's actually quite a lot of lane feet in that circle area, as well as we have a significant intersection at Catalina. We anticipate having to replace signal poles at that intersection. Those are old Marblite poles. We'd like to bring those up to our current standard metal poles. So we've recommended $1 million in additional funding for that project. And then we have a Metro-funded citywide traffic signal communications. So trying to bring our technology up to more current standards for communication between the signal loops and video detection and communicating with additional signals and with the broader network that the county monitors for our traffic signal improvement program there. So that completes our street improvement list, 16 projects in total. Move on to the waterfront here. Excited to be moving forward with some of these projects. Basin 3 is the marina right near the International Boardwalk. A couple of years ago, the city began to operate this marina from the current leaseholder or the former leaseholder. And so we have a number of deficiencies there with the gangways, the gangway platforms, the docks themselves. So this is an allocation we're asking for to begin the design process, likely of the gangways and platforms initially, but eventually we'll want to replace the docks there as well. Harbor dredging, we've spoken about, $2.3 million ask for that one. Harbor patrol docks, this is our emergency response on the water. Our location right outside of Fire Station 3 handles LA County boats. Number of agencies use these docks. Our police and fire, of course, use these docks, as well as there are just outside the break wall, the inner break wall, there's a sewage pump out station. So this project will replace those old wooden docks with concrete docks. In the process of our investigation, we realized that the piles that hold the wooden docks are failing or in bad shape. It's the right time to replace them. So this project cost has ballooned a bit from what we originally anticipated. We think it's worth it. We're recommending this number, but we are doing some value engineering even this week to try and see if there's any part of this scope we can reduce to reduce the cost of that project. Harbor railings, Ted talked a little bit about. We're asking for some additional money to continue this program to either resurface or replace railings all around the harbor, both tidelands. This is primarily tidelands money, $500,000, I believe, of the $600,000 is tidelands. Our pier deck and piling structure, this is the annual program I mentioned before to be able to make repairs to the Horseshoe Pier and the Mondstadt Pier. We typically get damage every winter from the wave environment or winds to the structural members, cross members, etc. And we need to have money really on hand to be able to address those quickly. The pier parking structure is a successful program. We've done some major projects in the last 5 years or so that have done great improvements to enhance the life of the parking structure for several more years. It's time to begin design on the next phase of that. That's what this $50,000 is for. We have a pier restroom project in design right now. Out at the end of the Mondstadt Pier, there are 3 restrooms that are in need of some attention, and so we are moving forward with the project. But we've, as you know, on older facilities, the more you dig, the more you find, and we found some things that we need to improve their electrical systems, et cetera, to make these current standards. So we're asking for $150,000 for that project. The Redondo Beach Marina parking lot, our waterfront department has recommended changing over to a system very much like what's operated in our pier parking structure for pay stations rather than an attendant at the gate. And so there are some ADA requirements, some parking lot improvement requirements as well. The stations themselves are required. So the request for that project is $200,000. And then our hand launch dock, which I think we just put back in the water, we take it out every winter to kind of preserve its life, but we've noticed it's nearing the end of its life. So we've recommended this amount, $45,000, to begin the scoping and design of a new hand launch dock for use in the coming years. Okay, I think that's it for waterfront. Our park improvement projects, community gardens have been of interest in the community lately, so we wanted to set aside some money to be able to pursue and help support the efforts of nonprofit groups that are interested in developing those projects. Dominguez Park, the dog park improvements, this is a great funding source. The gas company is installing a project in the dog park itself to help alleviate the need to dig up 190th Street every few years to test their pipes and clean their pipes. And as part of that, they're making payment to the city, so that money is available here to improve the dog parks. General Eatonby Parkette improvements, we've got $50,000 there. That one's been on the books for a while. Need to do some work there. Pickleball is another community initiative that's come up. We want to approach that by doing an initial feasibility study to look at siting and number of courts and demand and that kind of thing. And so we've recommended $15,000 for that. We have play surfaces at many of our parks that have about a 7-year life. And so we are constantly replacing those. And so we've got 4 parks identified here for play surface replacement this coming year. The SCE right-of-way west of PCH, this is money set aside to do preliminary planning and engineering in pursuit of a license agreement with SCE to be able to use that space, some kind of enhanced landscape, walkways, passive recreation space out there. So setting aside $150,000 for that. And then our skate park improvement program, as I mentioned, it's a design build effort. We have a budget of about $150,000 right now. We're hoping that'll be enough. We wanted to put some more money so that we could do the project we want to do, that the council would support and the community wants. So we added a little bit of money to that to help be able to address those needs. Okay, we got one more category. Public facilities, aviation gym, great facility, gets a lot of use. Looking a little tired, need to do some work on the exterior of this. There's some hazardous material abatement that needs to be done. So we're recommending $150,000 for that. The Beach Bluff pedestrian path that runs between Nob Hill and Veterans Park, between the last set of homes and the bluffs there, that is maintained by the county, but the lighting system is ours. That was installed. Nobody could remember how long ago that was installed, but it's old. Most of them work, but they're in some hazardous conditions out there. It's just a good time to upgrade those. We'll certainly look at solar as an option along the path there if that meets the need. But we've identified $300,000 to address that. City park and facility parking lots don't ever get any attention. We have some really bad ones. We wanted to begin to address those. We can't use some of the restricted money that we use for other paving surfaces. Those are limited to roadways. So we've asked for some money here to be able to address those when we do paving in those areas. Perry Park is a very active senior center. The HVAC systems are just nearing the end of their life and need to be replaced. So we're looking at $50,000 there. Our RBTV broadcast facilities, that's essentially the chamber and the video systems and the second floor of the library that is used as a backup. We're looking at $200,000. Those are PEG fees typically that will go into that project. That project's well underway and about done, but this money will help us get over the finish line on that one. And then the $2.75 million grant from Metro for the Complete Transit Center is also on our list, as well as this Transit Fleet Operations Center is the maintenance building that's next door, and this is a formula allocation that we're given as part of from Metro to address facility needs, CIP needs. So that's a pretty specific number there. And then finally, Veterans Park Historic Library needs some love. Windows, paints, elevator issues. We haven't had a tenant in there, an operator in there for a while, probably COVID related. So it seemed like a good time to make those improvements. While we could, we've identified $405,000 worth of need there. So that completes about $4 million program for public facilities. I think that's all.
So with that, that essentially concludes our presentation. We're coming to you to receive the presentation and ask for your input and recommendations to the city manager to consider. Besides myself, Andy and Brad are here to answer any questions. And we also have with us online, Mike Klein, our Deputy Public Works Director, Marnie Ruland, our Financial Services Director, and obviously your staff liaisons. So I can keep the slide up as long as you want. I can make reference to any of the slides that you need, or I can stop sharing the screen whenever you tell me to do so. So we're here available for your questions now.
Thank you, Ted, and thank you all for that presentation. I thought at this point it might be easiest. I obviously want to give every commissioner every opportunity to make questions and comments in response to the presentation. And I thought instead of just going in a hand raising kind of order, I'm basically looking at the slide and I look at 4 commissioners at a time. But if you'll raise your hand, if all of you know how to do that through the Zoom format, I will simply scan across, and the first hand I come to, I'll call on, give you adequate time for your questions and comments, and hopefully I'll get through every single commissioner. So I'll begin that scan right now. And again, I'm just looking for any manually raised hands, or excuse me, the automated raised hands from the Zoom format. Okay, I see Commissioner Min's hand up. You have the floor.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the presentation, everyone. That was really great. I'm happy to see some of these projects moving forward and being in there. I just have a couple very general questions. Obviously, you couldn't request everything that's needed, right? There's got to be a lot more things that are deferred maintenance, other kinds of things that have to be done that just really aren't affordable at this point. And so you prioritized your projects in such a way to kind of be friendly to the budget of the city, especially during these times. So my question is, there's a lot of discussion in Washington right now, and in my day job, I'm doing a lot of preparation right now for potential infrastructure dollars coming down from the feds for this new plan. I've gotten a lot of contacts through congressional offices asking for information about earmark projects in this new bill. Is there anything that you guys are doing to prepare for that money to help perhaps offset some of these costs that you're proposing today, or for some of these deferred things that you didn't talk to us today, but you know are necessary? Is there anything happening related to that? Prepare for that.
Maybe I can start that off and have anybody else add. We have had those same conversations, and we've got those same requests from Congressman Liu's office. We have several projects that were placed in by the city. At this particular point, they're going to be complementary projects. I'll give you one example, which is the North Redondo Beach bike path. The funding that we received from Metro was to truly extend the bike path itself, but that Metro funding has a very small limitation of any ancillary improvements such as landscaping. So similar to what we did on the portions adjacent to Artesia, we're asking for some of that funding in order to help improve the pedestrian improvement as well as the landscaping out there. So there have been several applications, and we have staff that's in conversations with Congressman Liu's office to see what additional information they may need.
And I'll add as well, on behalf of the Waterfront Department, they have reached out to Councilmember Liu as well, Representative Liu and his office. And I think they had a list of 4 projects. Their advisor let us know that 3 of those projects would not be eligible. A 4th might be, that's the Breakwater project, which is actually owned by the Corps and maintained by the Corps. But we are trying to get that funding on behalf of the Corps. The Corps doesn't actually get funding to maintain the breakwater. It's one of 2 marinas in the state that is not considered a commercial marina. So we don't get the typical funding resources for our breakwall. So we were actively pursuing that piece as well.
Okay, great. I appreciate the update. Yeah, I think it may be the earmarks are one way of getting these funds, but I think a lot of these infrastructure dollars are going to come through competitive grants in the future. So I'm happy to hear that you guys you've received a bunch of grants, and some of this South Bay COG Measure R, Measure M monies could be used as leverage for those grants as well. So happy to hear that, and thank you for the update. That's all I've got, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Min. I see Commissioner Woodham's hand up. You have the floor, Jerry.
Just a couple of quick questions. How much did you spend in fiscal 20? What are you expecting to spend in fiscal 21? And how much are you asking for in fiscal 22? Just to put some comparable figures together.
I think when we started the presentation, we said we expended about $21 million in fiscal year. Actually, yes, in calendar year 20. I think and Brad, maybe you can help me with what we're asking for overall with new funding projects. But I think our carryover is about 40 million from before. I see the expenditure to be in the 20 million plus over the next year, because as we've said, there's several of the projects that are in design, some of which are high ticket items from a construction cost perspective. Transit Center being a significant portion of that. That's $11.5 million in just construction cost alone.
Yes, during the current fiscal year, we've spent just short of $10 million year to date on the fiscal year. In addition to that, we have about $15.5 million encumbered on contracts. Well over half of that is on the Transit Center contract. And next year, we're proposing $20.2 million in additional funding.
20.2 in fiscal 22?
Correct.
Okay, and I wasn't totally clear on the 40.4 million of carryover projects. That amount will be spent over several years, right? Certainly not in any one year.
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. I see Commissioner Glass's hand is up. Larry, you have the floor.
Thank you. Should Metro decide on the light rail routing to go down Hawthorne Boulevard, will we incur any costs for a connection between any station on Hawthorne and the new transit center?
I think that's an unknown variable at this point. They are still collecting data on their environmental assessment, as you are aware. They did receive the comments and the input from the city in terms of where it's preference. As to what they will do, part of the assessment is they're going to be looking at the two alignments. And in either alignment, they're going to be looking at connectivity to our transit center. So that should be the majority of it. There are some local return monies that they're not local return, sorry, local participation that they're looking to see. And I believe a lot of what we have expended on our transit center is going to be a component that they'll look into and identify that. But that is not a project that we foresee any construction or construction costs to come in for years. I think it's part of their 28 and 28 listing. Even from the Metro staff, I'm not certain that they're going to be expending those or completing the construction in 2028. So from a construction liability perspective or costing perspective, we don't see that for years to come.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, I'll hand the floor now off to Commissioner Hannan.
Thank you, Commissioner Chair. I was very impressed. I think it was a well thought out plan. I thought it was very well balanced, with North and South Redondo. It definitely had a lot of key programs in there. I got to tell you, I absolutely love the number of bikeways that were looked like they would be receiving funding. As well as the safety. I mean, we have seen Redondo Beach just take off as far as being a walk and bike friendly community in the last year or so, as well as the neighboring communities with Redondo. And I think that, spending this money, improving our infrastructure for not just automobile drivers, but also bicyclists and our new e-bike friends, as well as walkers and runners, I think is a godsend. So I'm happy to see that. I did have a question on the skate park. Did they pick a location on that yet? I see that was being funded for design, so I'm assuming they probably did. Maybe I didn't see that, but and the CPI projects, I mean, it looks like there's enough challenges in there, but certainly, taking care of the pier that's aging and certainly an eyesore in many respects. I think it's going to improve that, as well as, again, the safety and health of the residents. Anyway, thank you. Very good.
Thank you, Jim. And maybe, Andy, you want to talk about the park locations that the council identified as priorities?
Yeah, the council asked the staff to pursue 2 locations, different scope and scale of facility, but for skate park. One would be a smaller facility, or really features of a small skate dot or skate spot. They have different terminology at Perry Park. So that's conceived as a fairly small installation. The more prominent installation they recommended was in an area we call Pad 10, which is the old carousel site at the pier. And so that's the bigger of the 2 projects. We are going out with an RFP for design build for both of those together as a single contract. So those are the 2 locations that we're pursuing at this point. They did give us also direction to continue to pursue what they would call regional facilities at other park locations, 2 other locations specifically, to do further study on. Those are Franklin Park and Anderson Park.
Okay, thank you. I'll hand it over to Commissioner Conroy, and then after Commissioner Conroy to Commissioner Johnson.
All right, thank you, Chair. Okay, a few different questions. First one, mentioned the project about ADA access, improving that around the city. I was just curious, any ADA lawsuits brought against the city for lack of access so far? I know we've seen that in the private sector quite a bit.
Regularly, yeah. We get complaints, which we try and address. Sometimes they get to lawsuit level. Yeah.
Okay. And then, are there any funds coming from the Galleria site developer to improve the sounding or surrounding or perhaps arterial streets like Kingsdale? You're putting money in there to improve that.
Ted, you may know more. I haven't heard except from months, maybe a year ago now, 2 years ago, but there was some suggestion of surrounding money both along Artesia Boulevard. The number I remember was $1 million. I don't know if that's a final negotiated number or a suggested number at the time. And then also a non-numeric commitment to fund bicycle and pedestrian connections through the Metro Rail right-of-way to the neighborhoods to the west of the Galleria.
Yeah, I believe you're right, Andy, as far as the $1 million. I'm not certain if we are incorporating them. But the Kingsdale improvements, the Artesia Kingsdale improvements, those are projects that we've secured outside funding for. The transit center as a whole pretty much has outside funding that's funding the entire project. The resurfacing, I believe, is the only one that's receiving more local funding for. I don't know of the specific projects that the Galleria has outlined, but I believe that $1 million was for the city's discretionary funds to be incorporated into the CIP.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the waterfront, quick question on that. The water dredging project that you mentioned, does that do anything to expand the harbor, or is it purely a maintenance type issue? And if solely maintenance, how often do we do that dredging?
So it's purely maintenance. To expand or even deepen the harbor would be a phenomenal permitting nightmare. So we keep it to maintenance. We are allowed to over excavate to kind of help us get enough depth to where we don't have to go back with great frequency. The last time we tried to do dredging was in the mid-2000s. We had to stop because of some issues with the material that we found adjacent to the breakwater, some large boulders and such that weren't able to be excavated with the methodology used by the contractor. So we had to quiet that program. I don't recall when the time prior to that was that the marina was dredged. It was built in the 60s, mid-60s. So it may be the first full dredging. I don't know that for a fact, but it's been long enough that nobody can easily remember when the last time was that we did it.
Is the lack of dredging having any negative impact on the harbor currently?
Just navigational mostly. We get shoaling near the inlet to Basin 3, which squeezes down that throat, that fairway, and could be an issue with boaters. We also get a lot of shoaling along the breakwall where we end up kind of creating a beach out there, and it's kind of a nuisance, invites people to a not so safe area at low tides. So yeah, we want to address it in that area as well.
And Andy, maybe to add to that, we call it maintenance dredging from a access for the Army Corps of Engineers. The Army Corps of Engineers own and maintain the breakwater, even though a portion of it, according to them, is under our responsibility or financial responsibility. That dredging is an essential component for them to be able to access the breakwater to do those repairs. And we've had conversations with them over the last several years. We know that the breakwater is in need of repair elements, and they will also be looking at this dredging as a participation level by the city in order to help them fund the implementation of the breakwater repairs.
Okay, anything else, Commissioner Conroy? Okay, I think you were muted there, but I think that was okay. I'll hand the floor off to Commissioner Johnson and then Commissioner Solomon afterward.
Hi, good evening. In regard to the right turn lane at Aviation and Artesia, If I heard correctly, there was a mention of obtaining some of the necessary property to do that via eminent domain from the property owner. Are we talking about the property that is the Shell station? That's the one we were viewing in the photograph. And could you describe the property that's necessary that you're hoping to gain via eminent domain? Thank
Sure.
you.
Yes, you're right. It is the Shell station. It's about 1,700 square feet of mostly it's a fairly linear, 10 feet wide pathway along just inside of the right-of-way line there. There's an additional maybe 1,500 square feet for a temporary construction easement. We're also asking for just to provide a buffer between the construction area and the area of the gas station. That's a year-long lease. It won't take us a year to do the project, but we tried to be generous with that. The project was redeveloped. The property was redeveloped in the mid-90s and was redeveloped with the right turn lane in mind and an widening of the roadway there. At the Planning Commission level, when that property, the entitlements were granted, the Planning Commission chose to not require the dedication of that lane. And so they said if the city's interested, they can buy the property in the future. So we finally getting to the point where we're ready to do the project. We've been negotiating with the property owner, made a couple of offers for the property at market rates, after a full appraisal, and just got no response. And so we needed to move forward with eminent domain.
Yeah, and maybe Andy, let me add to that. The eminent domain is really the beginning. The process here was that the city council a few weeks ago adopted a resolution of necessity, and a resolution that basically says, yes, there is a public need that's greater than the private ownership of this land. So we initiates the eminent domain. It actually doesn't stop the city and the property owner from continuing their negotiations. And we're honestly hoping that those negotiations become fruitful so we don't have to file and continue on with the eminent domain process.
Got it. So we're hoping to encourage them to negotiate. Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Okay, Commissioner Solomon and then Commissioner Bajaj.
Thank you, Chair Funabashi. Ted or Andy, are we seeing a reformation of funding like Measure R funding or other state funding where we're being told that money is going to be reduced, cut off, or otherwise rerouted due to COVID related funding gaps or any other state monies that we're being told are going to be otherwise reduced or rerouted?
Maybe I'll let Andy answer portions of that. I think the Measure R and Measure M funding is directly tied to sales tax. Under the ordinance at which Metro approved and the voters approved within the LA County area, both of those measures, it specifically identifies what and how that funding or that portion of the additional sales tax money is apportioned. Can it be fluctuate based on sales tax? Absolutely, it can fluctuate because it is a sales tax measure. On the state side, I'm not certain. We know that Metro, has a need, but, on the apportionment under that ordinance that is directly related to the city, which is basically our local return monies, I don't believe I've heard anything from them as far as a reduction. On the capital side, do they have the authority to do certain things? They may, but I don't believe so on the local return. Brad or Andy, anything more to add on that?
I don't recall hearing any estimates, but Brad, you're in contact more with those folks than I am, so you may have an idea. I'll let you.
Well, I believe on the sales tax initiatives that you mentioned, Prop A, Prop C, Measure M, and Measure R, we do get almost like quarterly estimates on the local return revenue. They've been monitoring it pretty closely. We did see a dip last year for 2021, but the numbers that they've been giving us now for 21-22, they're starting to restore at least back approaching where they were the previous year. So that's been pretty consistent. I think we did see a somewhat noticeable decline on the gas tax revenue during this last fiscal year when the number of miles driven decreased quite a bit. So, but I think that's starting to recover also. I think the only thing as far as like some of the county revenue sources, Measure M, Measure R, beyond the local return portion, for example, the funds that are distributed through the COG, that was set up in the legislation when they established like the Measure M and Measure R program. I think they do have a chance to revisit part of that distribution, some of those specialized distributions to the COGs and such. So I think that would be the one opportunity where maybe they would try to get some more for their regional operating needs.
Okay, well, it doesn't sound like any of you all are worried about it, but maybe we'll keep an eye on sales tax revenues, and if we see significant erosion, then something to keep in mind. One of the items on there was the hand launch ramp in the harbor. And I thought the hand launch ramp had been completed, or is there still more work to be done there?
No,
So that's it. Go ahead, Matt, I'm sorry.
I was going to say it has been completed for the time being. And, you know, when we went through the removal and the repairs that were done is when we made the assessment that, you know, overall, it is going to need replacement. And that's what we're looking to do, is to program a scoping and prep work for the future. The last time we pulled it out of the water was 3 years. That was too long. We saw some extensive repairs that were necessary as a result. And in doing so, we've also made the assessment that it is going to need its replacement. It's at the end of its useful lifespan, essentially. And we're looking to prepare for that so that in the future CIPs, we're able to program the replacement costs for it.
Okay. Well, the hand launch ramp made somebody's Labrador Retriever very happy as it was getting on their paddleboard last weekend. So it looks great. It's getting a lot of use. For Dominguez Park and some of the park projects, are we using Quimby funds for that, or are we using other state funding?
Andy or Brad, do you want to handle that one?
Yeah, I'm looking at my spreadsheet here.
I know Moonstone Park's been set aside for quite a while, but you mentioned Dominguez Park.
Dominguez Park, Brad, you'll have to help me on the playground and walkways funding. I know the dog park portion of Dominguez Park is the special project revenue that we're getting from the gas company, $186,000 for this coming year.
Yeah, Dominguez Park is previous Quimby funds are already encumbered or appropriated to that project, about $1 million, as well as we put in some of the CFA, the Community Finance Authority funds last year. So we had about 1.3 million carrying forward on that project.
Okay, great. Thank you. And one last thing, Ted, I thought the Galleria was giving us $2 million for Artesia Boulevard. You think it's $1 million?
I may be corrected on that. I don't know, Brad, or maybe if Marnie, if you have any recollection of that value. If not, we can always get back to you and make sure that that's clear before we go to the city council with this information.
For what it's worth, my recollection was also $2 million, but could be a falling recollection.
I don't.
Well, thanks, John. Please go ahead, Marnie. I think she's done. Okay, that's all I have. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Solomon. Commissioner Bajaj.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, team, for the presentation. There's a lot of exciting projects in the pipeline. It's, as I said, very, very exciting. A couple quick points of clarification that I'd like, please. Is the Redondo Beach Marina parking lot the one where the pay stations are going? Is that the parking lot where the Rubies and the Samba Brazilian barbecue is in?
That's correct, yes.
Oh, okay. That'll be nice. So that could be one of these projects that actually generates more revenue than maybe currently, because I've seen it, like, you know, especially in the last few months, it might be unstaffed during some days or some weeks.
We're not saying that out loud, but yeah, you're right. We do anticipate that during winter months and weekdays that we will have a better generation rate through the pay station. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. That's great. Secondly, westbound Redondo at PCH, I saw, quite a significant fund being requested for the westbound right turn. Isn't there already a westbound right turn dedicated lane there?
There's a couple of improvements that we're looking to do. The queuing capacity for both the westbound right turn and the dual lefts is basically it's short of what it needs to be. Right now, the overflow comes into the two lanes that are going westbound, and what we wind up seeing is that overflow from both of those movements starts to affect the vehicle queuing on westbound Anita altogether. And we see a lot of vehicles that are having to shuffle through basically from one lane into the other as they start to pass up that bottleneck. The improvement is to modify the median, as Andy mentioned, open up that left turn pocket, if you will, for better queue capacity. We would also be shifting the through lane so that we can provide additional queue storage for the westbound right without impacting the westbound through. So it's really going to minimize the weaving that occurs today. And I know today I speak in terms of COVID conditions. Those numbers aren't quite what they used to be a year ago. But prior to that, we saw a lot of weaving, a lot of queuing impacts, and that's what this project is going to alleviate.
Right. Okay. I have one more comment, but before going there, I know that it's probably a Caltrans issue is to get that cat track across from the through lane onto the west side of PCH.
Yeah. And that's something that we've been in conversations with them on. We're really hoping what Andy mentioned, their CAP-M project, which is the resurfacing of Pacific Coast Highway, that they'll be incorporating some of those improvements into that project.
Right. Okay, thank you. And then last comment is for Manhattan Beach Boulevard, the estimate which has been provided for the resurfacing. I know in one of our previous meetings there were discussions of, depending on the design, may require the median to be altered or shaved off or narrowed a bit. Does that figure, which has been shown in the slide, does that incorporate sort of the worst case scenario if median work is required?
It does. We're interested in providing class 2 bike lanes or enhanced class 2 bike lanes, buffered bike lanes along that. And we may require median reduction in some areas, and we are trying to provide funding if that's the direction we end up going.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And thank you. Go ahead, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I see Commissioner Wynn's hand up, so I will pass the floor off to you, Min.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. A couple questions. Let's start off at the Transit Center. The old one is going to be demoed. Do we own that land that it sits on, or is that part of the Galleria? What are we going to do with that old Transit Center?
We currently own that parcel where the Transit Center is. Part of the arrangement with the owners of the Galleria is to swap that piece of property for a portion of the property where the new Transit Center is going right now. So currently we own the old one. They own the new one. We're renting the new one from them, leasing it from them so that we can construct. And when the new one is operational and we're moved off the old one and we've restored it, we will execute the land swap.
Gotcha. Okay. And then going over to Inglewood and Manhattan Beach, the southbound right turn lane, that was being funded by Measure, or it's not funded by us. What was used?
It's a Metro Measure R regional project. So competitive Measure R money within the region.
Okay. And then that property owner at that gas station, which I think is also a Shell. Is it a Shell? It might be a Shell.
I don't remember the new operator there.
They've gone through a couple of changes. I don't know.
It's USA.
USA, okay.
See that now?
Yeah, they came in coincidentally. We had actually requested money to acquire a 10-foot strip of land there as well, and they came in to redevelop coincidentally. Our former planning director found a way to negotiate the 10 feet out of them without having to pay for it. And so that's been a bit of a boon for this budget. So we had to buy a piece of land to make a nice transition kind of around the Havana Mania store into that right lane. And so we did have a property purchase agreement approved by the council a couple of meetings ago and are in the final processes of completing that transaction.
Okay, so it looks like we're in design, and then when do we break ground on construction? I think you said sometime in the summer?
Yeah, we'll we advertise it this week. It usually takes about 3 months to get from advertising, to get the bids collected, to get the bid awarded, and to get the folks on site to begin the project. So we're looking at 90 days or so from when we advertise. That would put us at the end of May, June, July, roughly, before we start.
I remember there was some utility boxes that were in dispute. I think they were owned by some water company that was resolved.
Metropolitan Water has a facility there. It actually predates the city's right to be in that space. So the dispute was really over what kind of easement they would give us. We ended up paying for the relocation of their facility, but the Measure R paid for it. It wasn't the city. That's an eligible cost. And so right now we're just finishing up a new easement agreement that kind of memorializes the understanding of who's got rights to do what out there if the city needed to, expand the right of way again.
Okay. And then on Manhattan Beach, I echo that Manhattan Beach really needs to be repaved, and if we can shave off some of the median to give more bike lanes, I welcome that. I think that get more use than the medians. So Manhattan Beach right now, repaving, it sounds like it's just nothing's been done right. You're in the stage of asking for the money in this next budget.
No, we're actually well into design. We're about 60% design. We're awaiting our 60% design submittal within the next couple of weeks on Manhattan Beach Boulevard. So we're moving forward. We've been to the Public Works Commission to get input, been to the City Council to get conceptual design approved. Those conceptual designs included the reduction of westbound lanes to make room for bike path. We have 3 westbound lanes for a good part of that stretch of the road, but only 2 eastbound lanes. I think I have those numbers right, Gene or Ted, help me out. We approached the council with what about reducing the number of westbound lanes to match the eastbound and then use the space for bike facility. And that was supported by the council and subject to the design requirements, specifications of our designer. So we anticipate seeing that here in the next few weeks at a 60% level. We'll do another review, comments, and then move them on towards the 90% level. Each time we do that, we get an estimate. So we help kind of sharpen our pencil on our estimate at that point.
And Andy, as submittal, we anticipate their analysis on that potential reduction. So they're doing a traffic analysis for us to see if we can afford to remove that 3rd westbound through lane, which will help us tremendously. That may minimize us having to touch the curb medians at all as far as a reduction. We know the council supports the Class 2 facility for the bicycle improvements, and that's what we're hoping that we would be seeing with that 60% submittal.
Okay, great. One thing on Manhattan Beach Boulevard, so I noticed when you're going westbound on Manhattan Beach Boulevard and you go into the Manhattan Beach border, there's a sign that says no semi-trucks or over tonnage. But then you come on the Redondo Beach side, there's no sign saying we're limiting that. Is that a noise issue, or is that something where a lot of tonnage would damage the street? What is that all about? You guys know?
Gene, can I defer to you on the classification of the roadway and the truck route component of it?
Yes. It mainly has to do with the fact that certain roadways are designated for the movement of goods and freight and things of that nature. And so happens that the Manhattan Beach Boulevard portion within our city is wide enough and has a higher average daily traffic plus larger truck volume that's associated with the movement of such goods. And so it's designated as a truck route. And then once you cross over to aviation, I believe the roadway narrows and their designation in their city is not designated as a truck route. And so that kind of, they've made that differentiation, if you will, as you cross Manhattan Beach from through our city to theirs.
Really, part of it fits into the industrial uses that we have in the city of Redondo. So on that north side, we've got this industrial uses that do have significant sized trucks coming in to deliver, pick up materials, etc. So it's a necessity, not just a classification of that roadway.
Okay. What? Okay. And thank you for fixing that sign at the Performing Arts Center. That really needed to be fixed. So when I saw the new sign up, it's a big improvement to the neighborhood. So thank you. And all the questions I got. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner Wynn. I had a couple of questions of staff. First of all, Ted, you were very detailed on the Morel House roof replacement in terms of the material and all, but I don't recall seeing in the slide presentation an actual dollar amount of what that roof cost to replace. Do we have that number available?
We do. It was just shy of 100,000. I think the overall budget was $100,000 to do that.
Okay, thank you. And my other question is in regards to the Seaside Lagoon. Noticed nothing really on the slide presentation, any line items for any improvements or costs associated with that. And I know that although it was obviously closed all last year, I guess one of my questions is, will it be opening up this summer, or is there a target date when it will? And just what is the status of the Seaside Lagoon?
The council had given staff direction to open it by mid-June, if I recall correctly. So we have
June 15th.
I'm sorry? Did you say June 15th, Commissioner Solomon?
Yeah. Yeah.
June 15th, Ted.
June 15th, yeah, that's the mid-June date. So we have both public works staff and community services staff that are working preparation of that opening. There is a report that's supposed to be going back to the city council. Not sure if it's on the 4th or the 4th meeting, the 4th of May, which is the first meeting in May, or the subsequent meeting in which we will be presenting that information. But I can tell you that public works staff and community services staff are working in anticipation of that opening to happen in the mid-June period. As far as capital is concerned, we don't have any proposed capital changes. It's just maintenance and upkeep of the existing facility, which is why you wouldn't see that on the CIP part of it.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to scan across the rest of our commissioner board here and see if there are any other hands up. I think, has everyone had a chance to make comments? Oh, there we go. Okay. Commissioner Samples, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is probably more of a curiosity question than a serious question about budget or process. But getting back to Inglewood and Manhattan Beach Boulevard, you were mentioning that this is meant to go out to bid in the next few weeks, and it'll probably be sometime around July before work is started. I noticed that the city of Lawndale has already posted signs for construction around that intersection, and we all know how bad traffic is around that entire area. Is Redondo coordinating with Lawndale to make sure that we minimize the traffic disruption and the amount of time that this project is going to take?
Yes, thank you for that. We have been working with Lawndale. We actually have kind of a handshake agreement to coordinate the entire paving of Inglewood between Marine and Manhattan Beach Boulevard through their project and through ours. So we've been working with them on their design. They're coming down as far as the railroad tracks. We're going from the Manhattan Beach intersection as far north as the railroad tracks. And so we will, initially we thought we'd be done before them, and it turns out they'll be done before us. But I don't see any scenario where we'll both be out there at the same time unless they have just a tremendous delay in what they're planning to do. So it will be an impact. Certainly commute times, that's one of our worst through lanes, intersections. That north leg of that intersection is bad, especially in the afternoon commute. We are talking to the contractor, at least anticipating the contractor requesting night work, some other options there. So we will get to that point when we have a contractor to talk about that with. But that's something we've considered, balancing that against the residential impact of, night work and that kind of thing. So.
Very, very good. Thank you. Overall, I enjoyed the presentation. It looks like you're doing a lot of work, and it sounds like over the years, our entire public works department has become much more proactive in trying to look forward into what we're doing and get your projects in line with where we're going. So really appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Chairperson Funabashi, you're on mute.
Thank you, Ted. Commissioner Woodham, I see your hand up. Did you have a question or comment?
That was a mistake if it was up. I'm sorry.
Okay, not a problem at all. Okay, let me then scan quickly. Okay. I do not see any other hands up for additional comments or questions. So I believe we're now tasked with a motion to receive and file tonight's presentation.
I'll make such a motion.
Okay, I hear Commissioner Hannon. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
And who's that, Commissioner?
This is Commissioner Min.
Commissioner Min. Okay. I'll start off with all those in favor say aye, or maybe it'd be best if we take a voice count. Staff, does that sound appropriate?
Yeah, that would be very appropriate, and I can begin whenever everyone's ready. All right. You know what? I'm just going to go ahead and do a roll call vote for both the Public Works Commission as well as the Budget and Finance Commission, just to kind of push us along. And so going down the list, Commissioner Woodham.
I seem to have aye.
Oh, apologies. I misheard. Commissioner Samples.
Aye.
Commissioner Wynn.
Aye.
Commissioner Bajaj.
Aye.
Commissioner Solomon.
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson.
Aye.
Commissioner Conroy.
Aye.
Commissioner Hannon.
Aye.
Commissioner Glass.
Aye.
Commissioner Min.
Aye.
Commissioner Simpson.
Aye.
Chair Funabashi.
Aye.
Then I think we have Commissioner Marin.
Aye.
And Commissioner Garcia.
Aye. Okay, seeing that the ayes have it, that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. And there's the full screen. Thank you very much. With this, I believe now I'll entertain a motion to adjourn our joint meeting of our two commissioners. So I just need a motion for that.
So moved.
Okay, was that Commissioner
Johnson?
Okay, Commissioner Johnson, and do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay.
Okay, and who was the second?
I think I was.
Commissioner
Hannon.
And that's Commissioner Hannon. Okay. I believe I'll say all in favor say aye.
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 And anyone opposed say nay. Okay, hearing no nays, then our motion to adjourn passes unanimously. And I thank our Budget and Finance Commission for joining us this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I think right now then I just need a motion to reconvene our Public Works Commission meeting. Unless anyone is pressed, feeling that we need a break, I thought we might just power right through. Does that sound good?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll make that motion. Larry Glass.
Okay, Commissioner Glass has a motion to reconvene our Public Works Commission meeting. Do I have a second?
I will second.
Commissioner Simpson is our second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, hearing none, that we are reconvened our Public Works Commission meeting, and we will move on now to item K1, our last major topic for this evening, discussion on Public Works Commission approved projects and status updates. So I'll hand it off back to staff. It's all yours.
So the second item we have on board tonight is just our standard. I realized that as part of the administrative report, I may have mentioned that this was a quarterly meeting. However, based on the current bi-monthly schedule of our Public Works Commission meetings, actually it would be a tri-annual update. And so it'll be every 4 months, if you will. And so our last one was just purely back in October, because that's when we had the availability in regards to our Public Works Commission meeting schedule to have an update. And then next availability we had was in April, which is this month. So as part of this month's meeting, just a quick status update, if you will, based on the Commission's direction for staff to provide updates on some of the Public Works Commission's decisions that are made to be forwarded to the City Council for their approval. So I'm going to share my screen. There's not going to be much to look at, but I will share it nonetheless. Let's see. Okay. So, quick. All right. It says quarterly update here as well, which is not correct. So, two of the most recent Public Works Commission approved items were actually back in February, which was the first item was the Barrel Street Corridor traffic calming enhancements. The second item was, of course, the USBR 95. I'm going to delve probably more into the Barrel Street Corridor traffic calming enhancements because that's probably a little bit more substance and a little bit more that has taken place since our Public Works Commission meeting back in February. So that item, the following day, staff had a meeting with the council member District 2 and his constituents as part of kind of his monthly meeting. I believe it's a monthly meeting. As part of his monthly meeting, this item was brought forth to look at some of the alternatives that the Public Works had recommended along this corridor of Barrel Street between, if you recall, it'd be between Catalina Avenue and PCH. So, we kind of put together what the alternatives were, how the commission deliberated, and the commission's alternatives that they had recommended, which was the installation of alway stops along the corridor. That alternative was met with mixed review. Some residents were they were glad that we were looking at. They were, of course, glad that we were looking at this corridor for enhancements, but some were. What's the way I can describe it? I mean, some were thrilled that the always stops were recommended. Others had asked if we had looked at traffic circles along the corridor, which we have in a previous analysis. And overall, I mean, the general outcome of that meeting was that it was difficult to pinpoint a consensus as to what the residents wanted. And so what we had determined after that meeting was, we're going to send out a questionnaire. Let's send out a questionnaire. We'll provide alternatives. We'll give the residents an opportunity. Basically, all the addresses along that block, or along the 3 blocks, I should say. And then I believe the shopping center was included, and then a few of the other locations adjacent to the Barrel Street corridor between Catalina Avenue and PCA. So a total of 360 mailers, I believe, were sent. It was a 2-page questionnaire, and I'm already getting responses back, of course. I believe it was sent about 2 weeks ago, and so I'm getting responses back. And even as I'm looking through the responses, it's a mixture of, let's do traffic circles. We don't need alway stops. We should do alway stops. And so I'm ultimately trying to compile all of that information, all that data. I'll try to put it into a nice tabular form, graph. We'll have some diagrams, aerials, so on and so forth, as we typically do, and present our findings to the City Council, and basically reach out to City Council for their final approval of what the traffic enhancement should be along that corridor. So that's kind of where we're at now with that Barrel Street corridor traffic calming enhancements item. A few of the other items that I'd like to update the commission on is, if you recall, the Fermona corridor by Inglewood Avenue, a couple years ago, I believe, was approved for traffic circles along the corridor, temporary traffic circles. staff had brought the assessment to City Council. The City Council's decision was to remove the traffic circles and install always stops along the corridor. As part of that same project and an Inglewood area project, we were also tasked with reaching out to the residents to get feedback and see if we can get concurrence on the installation of speed cushions. So following resident concurrence, we are about at our 90% design point of speed cushions along the 3 corridors of Ralston, Fisk, and Harper. And then for the Fremona corridor itself, part of the task when we removed the traffic circles and installed always stops was to also look at stop compliance along that corridor. And so we got stop compliance data counts last week, I believe. We have felt that traffic had kind of normalized. There's a little bit of a difficulty trying to get data during COVID, mainly because with traffic being the way it is, we've gone out a few times and gotten actual vehicle data, and what would normally take a nominal amount of time to get the number of entries we would need, vehicle entries we would need, data we would need to really make an assessment is taking almost a time and a half, twice as long to get the same number of vehicles. And so, we were kind of holding off for a bit, and then we recognized and realized now that traffic's, not that it's fully normalized, but we do recognize that traffic is slowly beginning to increase with more facilities and more things being available and more, end land uses being open. And so we felt that was a good time to get some counts. So we got some counts, it's either last week or the week before, and I haven't done a full review yet of the stop compliance along that corridor, but in looking at a little bit of the spot data does show that compliance is relatively pretty low along that corridor. So there's not a lot of vehicles that are coming to a full stop at those always stop intersections, especially in the northbound and southbound direction along the corridor itself. And so, once I kind of review that data, I'll package that and kind of present that again to the City Council as part of the initial direction from the council to take us to have us take a look at that. Couple other updates I'd like to provide. I think a couple of them are actually CIP related. We've talked about the MBB resurfacing. Currently, I'll have as part of our bi-weekly meetings, I'll have a meeting with them on Wednesday to get a better idea of our status update. But they're chugging along with finalizing the traffic analysis and also doing the resurfacing design. Traffic analysis, of course, is looking at the reduction of that through lane, that number 3 lane, to see if the installation of a buffered Class 2 bike facility is appropriate or if that's feasible. We have our design consultant on board that's working on Torrance and Francisca, the signal design on the intersection of Torrance and Francisca, looking at the signal design for Harbor Drive and Yacht Club Way for that southbound right turn phasing onto Yacht Club. Couple other projects we have. Largely, we're starting to, at least about a month and a half ago, we've been starting to kind of kick up on a lot of the traffic calming related projects, if you will, because like I said before, we're beginning to recognize that volumes may slowly begin to normalize. Like I said, they're not exactly where they were 2 years ago, but we are realizing that volumes have been slightly increasing and what we're considering to be somewhat normal. And so we've kind of, not that we haven't done it before, but now we're kind of more full bore on going through with a lot of our traffic calming projects, as well as some of the other traffic engineering related projects. That kind of concludes a quick update. I know that there wasn't much to discuss this time around, but I do have several items and several bigger ticket items, quote unquote, that I'm preparing for the next Public Works Commission meeting. And so with that, my recommendation to the Public Works Commission is as follows: is to receive and file the Public Works Commission project status updates. I, of course, am available if you have any questions.
Okay, thank you, Jane. Really appreciate that update. I'm scanning just for any hands raised from our commission. If anyone has any questions, let's see. Okay, I'll just start at the top. Commissioner Simpson.
Just very quickly, will you be coming back to the commission with anything more on the Barrow Street traffic comment, or is that just going to go directly to City Council?
That would go directly to the City Council, and I would provide basically the process, the procedures that we took, as well as the City Council's results at a follow-up triannual status update.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Min.
Yeah, Commissioner Simpson kind of asked me the same question. I mean, obviously that we had just as much disagreement during our commission meeting as it seems like there was during community comment. So not very surprising. I think, you know, I'll just voice my support for the traffic circles, but, you know, permanently in some form or another. I know that that was a very expensive proposition that we discussed last time, but it would be nice to have feedback about their survey once you get it, even if it's not a formal action item or something. It'd be nice to hear, you know, what the community thought. That's all I got.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Bajaj.
Thank you, Chair. Gene, can you please refresh my memory? How many traffic circles has the city deployed on a pilot basis? And out of that number, how many have been reverted?
We've installed a total of 5 traffic circles at 5 different intersections. 3 of which were along a corridor, and that's the Fremona corridor that I had mentioned. Of the 5, and I couldn't recall the second part of your question, but I'm gonna guess that you're asking how many of them have been removed, or how many of them are still, yeah, all been removed.
So at what point does the city stop entertaining the option of putting them in? Is there a number where we're gonna say, okay, maybe after 7 or 10, if the end result is to keep on removing them, at what point do we not even provide them as a menu item for the city of Redondo Beach to provide?
That's a great question. And Andy probably can have a more refined answer than what I may be able to provide.
Yeah, I was going to try and rescue Gene on that one, but so the city council approved a program where each district would consider 1 or more locations where we could introduce these and get the community used to them and in favor of them. So we went through a pretty long process, which each of the council members at the time identified 2 or 3 or 4 locations, and so began to roll them out. After we hit 0 for 5, we decided that we weren't going to actively pursue that anymore. But that doesn't mean we wouldn't consider them if the community seemed to indicate that was preferred. I do think we are rethinking how we implement them. You know, we've been criticized mostly for aesthetics. And I'm sure our temporary nature of these things has also contributed to some confusion, maybe not so much to drivers, but to pedestrians, and invited some, I'll call them yahoos, to drive straight through the middle of these things just to prove that they shouldn't be there. So I think, you know, we really ought to look at maybe a different approach where we just, you know, hold our nose and install one for real and kind of train the public to get used to it that way. That's above my pay grade doing that. But that would be my recommendation if somebody asked me, that we just bite the bullet and say, let's commit to it. Let's make it look good. Let's make it function properly. Let's do all the ancillary work that we should do, you know, in terms of the corners around the traffic circle, the pedestrian crossings, markings, all that kind of stuff, in a more permanent way to persuade people that it's actually a good and safe solution. Unfortunately, that costs $50,000 to $100,000 per intersection, so it's a bit of a roll of the dice. It's not something we've been pursuing, certainly in the last couple of budget cycles with COVID and such. So that's, you know, if anybody asks my opinion about how to approach the next one, that's what I'll say. But to answer your question, we have gotten away from actively pursuing these temporary monitor for 6-month kind of installation.
Right.
process.
So if this one goes through with a survey, it's not a temporary pilot. This will be.
I couldn't say that for sure. This, what my opinion is, like I said, it's above my pay grade. If the council member wants to put in a temporary one, or the council as a whole is unwilling to commit X tens of thousands of dollars to put in one as a commitment, I'm not going to oppose that.
Right.
Just too much of a what's the right word? It's just too controversial
Right.
to really commit that way.
Quick follow up to that. Out of the 5 that were installed, were they all installed at existing two-way stop controlled intersections, or were stop signs actually removed as part of the temporary traffic circle installation?
Gene, help me remember. I don't think we removed. I think we had two-way stop control at 4 of the intersections. One of them was just a one-way. One of the roads was one-way, and so we had two-way out of 3 possible ways, or one way out of 3 possible ways stop controlled.
Okay.
Right. I think the technical answer would be that none of them were always stops. Stop signs were removed because the two-way stop control still had stop signs that needed to be removed. None of them were always stops.
Okay. And so the end result, though, was the traffic circle was lifted, and now these are always stop controls.
Yes.
Got it. Thank you.
Did we do always stop at Blossom and Plant, or did we just revert to what it was?
I believe we went always stop there.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Hannon, I see your hand up. You have the floor.
Well, thank you. I think we've all experienced a lot of drama, certainly when it comes to four-way stops. But I'm from Long Beach. I was raised in Long Beach, and I think if Long Beach has 5 roundabouts, they have hundreds. I mean, they have, but it didn't happen overnight. But I know that people and a lot of family members live in Long Beach, and typically before these things happen, they usually socialize it with the neighborhood. They put out, they promote it. I mean, they put out information, educational pamphlets, how they work. They do videos. They show it on their closed circuit TV cameras. They really socialize it. They do a great job before they're put in. So the neighborhood knows what to expect. The neighborhood has a lot to do with the design, the aesthetics of the roundabout, what they put in the middle, and it's consistent with that particular neighborhood. I know that, from an engineering standpoint, it's entirely different than marketing, but you've got to have both. And the reality is the fact, I don't think any of us would go through this much trouble or, if we didn't feel it actually saves crashes or prevents crashes, it saves lives and injuries. And I think the data shows that. If people, go through the transition, get used to them, they usually like them or love them, but it's a difficult transition. I mean, it's kind of like getting a COVID shot. Okay, I mean, not everybody wants one, but once you get it, you're kind of happy you got that behind you. So you've got a little bit of a safety margin with it. So I hate to abandon it, but I do think the next roundabout, it really, we need to market it. We need to really make sure that we educate the public and not to, ignore what they're asking for, but they really need to understand the differences. And I mean, from an emission standpoint, from a health standpoint, I mean, there are so many advantages. Anyway, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hannon. And we've discussed this previously. I can't help but think, the contrast is the cost of a permanent traffic circle or roundabout compared to just putting in 4 stop signs. I mean, the cost comparison kind of, is kind of hard to overcome. What some of you may not know, though, is for many years, the city of Redondo was batting 1,000 when they put a traffic circle down at the end of Catalina down by Miramar Park. I mean, that is the one example, if you're familiar with it, how it has the beautiful flower beds. It brings the spoke of a couple different streets together. I totally agree with you, Commissioner Hannon, that, you know, education and maybe, you know, even having, dare I say, staff, you know, or some committee out there, you know, for the first week, kind of helping people steer around it during the busiest times of the day, you know, might be appropriate as well. I, for a number of years, have suggested, you know, up in North Redondo here, if you're familiar with Robinson and Phelan, which has a cute little shopping center here in North Redondo. Dare I say, it's a bit of a center focal point intersection in Redondo. I always thought the dimensions would be ideal for one that we would just go full bore right out of the gate with the full concrete and the flower beds and everything else. Because I've always thought that, having gone to every single one shortly after they were installed to see for myself, it looks like a construction zone. And no wonder the neighbors weren't really all that happy with it, because it was not very attractive for that 6-month trial. And anyway, not to beat it up too much, but again, I'll put out that intersection in North Redondo as maybe something that our council person MD could get behind. But I think that would be a focal point that could be a real display or a showpiece for how this could work. And obviously, we'll look for the results from those polls from the borough surveys. So anyway, that's my take on it. Does anyone else have anything else?
Can you repeat the intersection for my?
Yeah, sure. It's Robinson Street and Phelan.
Okay, right by Dale Page Park.
Right by Dale. It's just west of Dale Page Park.
Thank you.
And yeah, I think that would just. I always thought that would be an ideal intersection. It is a 4-way stop, and I think it's even traveled pretty well. That I think it would, you know, it could also serve as something that could be educational. So,
yeah, you know, Commissioner Funabashi, I would support that, because I've had several friends who live right on Robinson or right near Robinson complain about speeding and other traffic issues there. So I think that would be a very good potential solution to slow everything down.
You know, and it's also kind of interesting, you know, I think that a significant number of drivers feel a certain, you know, anxiety, especially when two cars at right angles come to the stop sign at the same time. And I live on a corner here in District 5, and I had to chuckle even just this afternoon looking out my kitchen window as somebody just literally blew right through. I mean, they came off of Inglewood. Maybe they slowed down a little bit, but they made no attempt to even do California. It was like an Indy 500 roll, you know. Okay, went through it at like 15, 20 miles an hour, you know. So, you know, it always amazes me how some people, there actually are a significant number of drivers who don't stop at all. They just figure everyone else is going to stop, whether they're to my left or to my right, they're just going to stop. I even believe there's been a couple of collisions in my neighborhood where you had two people coming in at right angles and they both thought the other was going to stop. So how it all panned out as to who was ultimately at fault. But, you know, we're always going to have to contend with that as well. And stop signs and traffic circles aren't going to stop that either. But certainly to keep traffic moving, I'll be curious to see what, as we watch summer progress, what the new 4-way stop on Torrance Boulevard between PCH and Catalina, you know, obviously that's a much safer intersection, but we know already from the first hot summer of the weekend about a month ago just how backed up that's going to get and how we're going to have to deal with that perhaps in the future as well. But anyway, that's my 2 cents. Do we have anything else? Any other comments before we go on to referrals to staff? Okay. Then seeing none.
Do we need to move and accept that report?
I believe we do, yes. So I will entertain a motion to receive and file our presentation tonight. Thank you, Commissioner Simpson.
I'll make that motion.
All right, you've got the motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, second from Commissioner Hannon, very good. I'll take a roll call vote for this one as well.
Commissioner Hannon?
Yes.
Commissioner Lynn?
Aye.
Chair Funabashi?
Aye.
Commissioner Bajaj?
Aye.
Commissioner Simpson,
Aye.
Commissioner Garcia,
Yes.
and Commissioner Glass.
Yes.
Okay, that is unanimous. So we have that received and file. We'll move on to our favorite item, that member items and referrals to staff. I will just start off as a request to staff to look into that blue folder item, the email that we received earlier about the potential for opening parking spots up on that new development there on Prospect. And that will be it for me. And I'll just go straight through the line here. Commissioner Hannan.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion or ask staff if they would keep track of, we obviously, it looks like ahead, we have a lot of bike projects, and it's usually connected with the bicycle master plan, and we're trying to keep track of how much has been implemented on the bicycle master plan. And I think last time Andy and I met, we came up with about 9% of what was approved by the city council in 2011. We've, in the last almost 10 years, we've implemented about 9% of it. And I think that that should be on the same status that Gene reported on a few minutes ago. And I think we should, on a quarterly basis, be at least aware of how much progress has taken place.
Anything else, Commissioner Hannan?
Not right now.
Okay, thank you. Then Commissioner Glass.
Okay, good thing you mentioned a few minutes ago about a car zooming through a stop sign. And I continue to see lots of bicycles going through the stop signs, and I think we're going to have some tragedies around here. I'm also concerned that e-bikes, the electric bikes, are going on sidewalks and also not stopping for signs. And I believe the e-bikes are motor vehicles that for sure ought to be stopping for the signs. So do we have a responsibility to somehow educate those bicyclists that they need to safely use the infrastructure that we're putting in for them? And so, Commissioner Hannan, why don't you comment on how you would, get your fellow cyclists to operate in a more safe manner? It isn't kids, it's adults. I see guys in suits riding their bikes through stop signs. So over to you. And I've got a couple more after that.
Oh, geez. Well, listen, I agree with you, Commissioner Glass. I think there's a lot of lawlessness out there. And by the way, you're right, they're not always children. They're all, most of the time, are adults. And I think that, what you have is, you primarily have the same behavior, whether a person's driving a 4,000-pound car and it runs a four-way stop, or the same personality exists when that same person rides a bicycle. I mean, they just blow through the stop signs, and it's gotten worse with the e-bikes. And I think a lot of that is legislation. And I don't know if you're familiar or not, but it was proposed, as a matter of fact, it seems to be progressing, going through the California Senate, that they're trying to adopt the Idaho stop rule and for bicyclists. And basically what that is it's a yield right of way. In other words, the bicyclist has to yield the right of way to the first motorized vehicle or bicycle that goes into the intersection, and they have to come to a complete stop. But if there's nobody in the intersection, they can just roll through it. I mean, so that's kind of interesting, the way we're going. California's had this in place. Idaho's had it in place for about 3 decades right now, and they have data showing it's actually been safer, because now all of a sudden the bicyclists, they're more predictable. At least you know what they're going to be doing. Washington now has adopted that, and Oregon has. We're the only state in the union on the West Coast that has not adopted that. So we'll see what happens. But meanwhile, I think we need to do a lot of education. I mean, meanwhile, it's a law. We need to comply with it. everybody needs to comply with it, whether they're driving a bicycle or driving a motorized car. So we need to do our share in educating the people. I would like to add one more. I knew there was a second item, but when Commissioner Glass said about the sidewalks, what we're recommending to a lot of cities is that we, city staff, that we review the rules, the sidewalk rules that each one of the city has. And by the way, each one of the cities, they are responsible for creating their own rules on if there's allowing bicycle riding or not. We know that most of the cities along the ocean have allowed bicycle riding, and it goes back to the 50s. If you look and see when those things were originally published, it was 60, 70 years ago. I think it's time to reevaluate that, and I would like to make a motion to staff to ask them to take another look at this, because what you have today is if you have a class 1 or class 2 bicycle, which means that the e-bike can do under 20 miles an hour, it's basically treated the same as a bicycle. So if you allow a bicycle to ride on the sidewalk, suddenly you're allowing people with e-bikes to ride on the sidewalk. And at that speed, that inertia, that weight, I mean, it is a deadly recipe. And I think that the city should reevaluate their current policy and maybe tighten that up. And I'd be happy to help with that, by the way. Okay.
Maybe we could also go out with a licensing program for e-bikes to at least get the owners so that we can educate them as to what the rules are.
Yeah, well, I'm working with Hermosa Beach right now, and they're asking for the residents to actually register their bikes as well as their e-bikes, just like they did years ago. So there are campaigns out there, and different cities are dealing with it differently. But I think it'd be a good idea if Redondo followed suit. Yeah.
Okay. My second and third items are a little quicker, but I'll go over them. On northbound Aviation and Manhattan Beach Boulevard, there is a left turn lane onto the westbound Manhattan Beach Boulevard. There's also McDonald's on that corner, and so every once in a while a car makes a U-turn, which means as he progresses out of the turn lane into the left turn, he sort of puts on the brakes and then makes a much harder turn, and the cars behind him come up rather fast because they're eager to get through the short turn light. I think we're going to, I'd like to know, are we having accidents there? And if so, maybe we should prohibit U-turns at that intersection. And then the second one involves our favorite other intersection, which is Manhattan Beach Boulevard and Inglewood. In Redondo Beach, we have a turn lane to turn left onto northbound Inglewood. And it seems like we have an awful lot of drivers who make that turn following the red, the red arrow showing up. And so there are a lot of almost collisions there from people who are headed west down Manhattan Beach Boulevard. When the light changes, they start moving, and yet there's still a car or two coming through. Is it time for a camera there or something to start discouraging people? Okay, so that's it for me.
Okay, Commissioner Glass. I'm scanning, looking for additional hands for any direct referrals to staff. And I see Commissioner Simpson.
Just a quick thought. I mean, it seems a number of these issues really are focused on law enforcement and on police action. And I wonder, at one point, as I recall, the Public Works Department had regular meetings with the police. Are those still happening? Are some of these things issues that could be brought up with the police department for some selective enforcement?
Yes. To the second question, the first question of whether or not we're still meeting, we haven't met in detail. It's just been, when instances or issues arise, then I've kind of deferred and sent emails to the traffic sergeant requesting their assistance. But in regards to a formal meeting, I believe we're going to try to squeeze one in this week. I think that's what we're trying to do this week, is to have that meeting and then kind of re-up and begin that meeting process again. We haven't for some time, especially because of COVID and vehicle volumes being lower and things of that nature. But now that some of the concerns seem to be arising again, we're going to reinitiate and restart that meeting process.
Okay, anything else? Commissioner Bajaj, I see your hand is still up. Did you have a question or comment?
Yeah, I wanted to mention to staff, I think on 190th Street at the intersection at Burl, the signalized intersection, I think the detection is in fail mode or whatever, but I think the eastbound left turn arrow comes up without any vehicular volume there and stays on for prolonged periods of time. So maybe you can have one of your field crews just go visit the location to check on the detection there to make sure everything is okay. And I noticed the same thing at 190th and Prospect, driving in I believe the northbound or southbound detection is stuck on because it holds the green light for extended periods of time on Prospect without any vehicle demand. So maybe something you can refer to your field crews, please.
And I would only add, if we're forwarding hotspots to PD, that certainly anything new, like the restricted left turn lanes on Inglewood at 182nd and further north at Ripley, I mean, all I can do is honk my horn when cars won't go straight. And obviously the whole idea was so both lanes could continue south at the busiest time of day. And so that's, some enforcement there, could be some revenue. We beat up Manhattan Beach and Inglewood, but we know cars that are in that right turn lane to go southbound Inglewood to West Manhattan Beach often go straight through as that third lane. So until we correct that, that's a violation as well. I still remember years ago, bicycle cops sitting in the alley behind the old dry cleaner just up from the school there, and they just pick them off left and right, 5, 6 in an hour, or two. And so those are the ones that kind of come to mind. Again, that I think, we talk about violations, and I know obviously volumes of cars are down and resources are stretched thin. I mean, I know we'd certainly rather have police officers doing other more important things. But anyway, I just throw that out there. If the resources are available, I think that would certainly be something to solve some of these issues that we're discussing as a commission. So, all right, anything else? Okay, well, then since we're completed with member items and referrals to staff, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make it. Larry.
Okay, Commissioner Glass, we have a motion.
I'll
Second. Commissioner Simpson is our second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Do we have any opposed? Say nay. All right, hearing no nays, then we are adjourned. Thank you,
Great to
gentlemen.
see everybody.
Yes,
Thank
stay well.
everybody.
Thank you all.
We'll see you out there. Okay,
All right.
good night now.
Bye, guys.
Bye.